Hey, what is up, YouTube family? It is K-Rod here. Back at it with another video for y'all today. Playing some gameplay by a good YouTuber that plays Call of Duty Warzone. Marshall, no commentary. Please go check him out. Good YouTuber, like watching his content. He has some really fire solo gameplay of Call of Duty Warzone. So yeah, let's get right into it. Before I get into the video, be sure to hit the like button, do what you gotta do, share the video around, and appreciate, every single one of you guys coming through. So, yeah, let's talk about some some ideas that I have on mind. Um, for the first, video idea, I wanted to talk about, my thoughts on the dating, market. Well, not dating market, but just pretty much not the dating world per se. Like, I wanted to kind of give you my whole point of view of like how I see things in terms of how certain functions go, like within the social universal worldview of like how I guess like people in the dating world are, and you know like for me personally, like I'll just give my personal like opinion on it. Nothing more, nothing less. But yeah, for this video, this will be just basically like my own like analysis of how I see things within the particular climate, as far as like the particular generational like overview of like how I see things. So yeah, let's get right into it, and I'll kind of like I'll basically state like my home, like I'll basically state my own like personal viewpoint off of it. So basically, in terms of what I have seen within, I guess like dating overall, a lot of people within most parts of what the world, which I would possibly even only talk about my own, perspective of how I see things, like, in the Western world at least, specifically in the United States. Dating has been far more compartmentalized by using social media, being too endeavored with having to, seek attention for certain relationships to be known to other people. And based off of how I see things, even though, I am older, but still, like, like I've had like my fair share of people that I've had like, interests for, in terms of quote unquote women. But I will say that as far as how I see things in the dating world per se, I think like things have gotten far more desensitized and more degenerate per se. And I think a lot of women are at fault for that particular manner, but my only case for it is simply for the fact that a lot more females are going out of their way to be raised to be more defiant against men. Therefore, men are having to fight against each other to be fooled by a woman's how should I say, I guess like sexual like appeal, or just like I'm not even too sure how to like really explain it, but it's more to do with just, social like attraction. And I think that's a good way of even explaining it, because not everybody thinks the same. Everybody has different views, different beliefs, and when women say that they want to have like a certain man in their life to quote unquote respect them and be with them, a lot of them end up just going in this weird mindset of saying that, well, I need to have somebody that that should care for me, blah blah blah. And when they complain to say that, well, where's all the good men in the world, then you start to kind of like question that, like that mindset where this could be like a case of having like corrupted feminism in a way, where like more so, it's not always to be the case, but there are women out there that are genuine, that do want to have like a good person to be in their life, i.e. the man. But it kind of makes you wonder, like, what are the functionalities of like what the woman is doing in order to be raised in a way, whether if she's wanting to demand more out of somebody to take advantage of them. Hold on, let me pause this for y'all. All right, I'm back. So yeah, pretty much for this particular manner, a lot of females always have this weird like personified mindset that things need to go a certain way of how they act with a particular man, and therefore they focus on this ideology per se where the man has to meet all certain criterias of being, very, like, I guess, how should I say, like, personally with me, like, I'm just going to give my own point of view because, I live in the Western world, so I live in the US, so I'm going to say things, from from a first world, country perspective. But it's always like, the woman that wants to be with a good, well off man, it would be the guy that is, he's quote unquote hot, he's attractive, but he's like, but he has like pretty much everything. He has like the nice car, he has like he has his financial wealth, but he's going out of like his way trying to like chase girls, but he's trying to go, with like the baddest chick ever. And I think like a lot of like the qualities that women are looking out of men are very toxic in the sense of even if the guy is not doing financially well off, but he only possesses something that the woman wants out of him, therefore using like sexual appeal, then therefore that's what goes out of like that mindset for the woman to say, well, I rather have like I rather have like a guy just like that because if I don't, then therefore that doesn't really give me like the satisfaction for like for like what I want out of like a guy. But that's never to always be like that's never always to be the case. There are men out there that are good people that don't have to be the most like heavily attractive dude out there, but if a dude that takes care of his body and he's having to, portray like a good personality to a particular woman that could be, of attraction to him, then there's always like a strong possibility that where things of that particular manner can go into the direction where a good, well average looking person, that being the man, is to meet, certain criteria where he doesn't really need to be going to the gym every day, but he is in shape, but he is at least keeping himself to a level of which he just has his life together and he has goals that he's trying to meet to his level. Then therefore if that doesn't meet like a woman's criteria for like what she wants out of like a guy, then what more does she want out of out of like a man that's going to give her what she wants? So I think it's like a really weird subjectivist like mindset that not every woman does, but a good portion of them go into this very strong feminist, character of having to make men be in competition with each other too much, to the sense of which they want too much demands out of the guy. Therefore, the guy is having to work 10 times harder just to impress a woman, and the woman doesn't have to work as hard. Therefore, life is like a lot easier for her, where she doesn't have to think too much like about, what the I guess like what the qualifications of like what a man wants from the particular woman. So, like personally for me, like I'm not gonna get into like too much detail with like everything that that a woman and a man wants, but I will say like in my own personal opinion, like with my own experiences, it's been a lot harder to have a conversation with a woman in this particular generation that I'm in compared to like what you can probably say maybe like, I don't know, let's just go back like 100 years. If women were more active talking to men every single day without having the concept of social media with the internet to like have the ability to just be with like their friends and get into all these like, groupie discussions about how they gossip like about guys, and women actually had to go out and network with certain people that they could possibly like, then certain previous older generations from the ancient past would prove that more women were more, you know, they were more stand up to a man, because a woman would have to, explain herself as the individual of like what she desires and what she wants. So, good enough, like I'm not even gonna like go far back into like the ancient time frame, but life today is like way better compared to I guess like, I don't know. I could probably go back to like what, if you want to go back to like the Roman Empire, like yeah, women back then were having to be more subservient to like a man back then, like based off of that cultural norm and predecessors that were brought into the Roman Empire, but that does not mean that they were actually they were enjoying their lives to actually get to know somebody and actually raise like a good strong family, versus like if you want to compare America, like 100 years ago compared to the Roman Empire, yeah, women back then in America were probably living way, yeah, they were living way better compared to women that lived during the Roman Empire, or let's just say that the British, I don't know, Victorian Empire of the Victorian monarchy. Like I don't know, like I can go back to like many different generations, but the case is that more women were more inclined to speak to men face to face rather than having the ability of technology that was given that was innovated for women to have the ability to network with men, get to know people through social media. Like this is like obviously new technology coming into. Oh, hold on, let me pause the. All right, I'm back. So, yeah, pretty much like my whole case is that women in today's modernized societal functions are far more better off having the ability to have technology with social media and do the things that they want to do, because there's more to offer in life where a woman can obviously have the ability to speak to more people in day-to-day life, whether even if it's like going through dating apps or anything to that manner, to just get to know people. But the problem with today's dating world is that more people are too inclined to social media, therefore they listen to what other people say about them. So therefore there's a social there's a social irrational disconnect between a man and a woman, where you're not really able to have a good, honest conversation with somebody on social media, because you don't know what the other person is doing outside of their life other than just them talking to you behind a computer or behind a personal device, that being a cell phone or whatsoever. So the whole problem per se is that there is more disconnection in physical social interactions, like in the modernized world, where you don't have that many people wanting to get to know each other and actually understand their values, because more people are too more people are very inclined to use social media as their means to actually get to know somebody. So it's like, if it means that that you have like certain people that want to act a certain type of way, to say that, well, I only talk to people through text messaging and whatsoever, I don't really go out and talk to people, then that's where the issue lies within, I guess, like the cultural norms that exists in the modern age in today's time frame, especially well, I would say all over the world. I mean, that's basically how it is globally, but specifically in the Western world, based off of my own personal like opinion, it's far more harder for a man to actually get to know a woman than for the woman not needing to do much of anything to even get to know a man, but all she needs to present is something that provides, value to the man to get to know her more easier, which, like I said, it's a sexual like appeal. So if the woman is to be attractive and she doesn't need to do much talking, but the man who is working his butt off to go to the gym and try to be super attractive to, the hottest girl that's sitting inside, let's just say, the classroom, sitting in high school, or let's just say wherever you are in any, public or private environment. That's usually how everything goes down. But it's like, why is it? Why is it that people subscribe to that type of thinking? Part of it to me, could be the means of, corrupted feminism to that degree, where women will take advantage of using sexual appeal to kind of corrupt men to thinking that that's what everything needs to be. You need to better yourself to impress a woman for her to like you. And that's not always to be the case. There are guys that are below average people, but let's just say guys that do take care of their lives and they have goals to be put into place. They don't have to they don't have to, you know, work their butt off in the gym to get, the most, attractive girl out there. But best believe if you got your money right and you have your success going in the right direction, then that woman that is out there that is, let's just say, I don't like using dating ratings, but I'll just use it for the sake of argument. If a girl that's a 8.1 decides to be with a guy that's a 7, a 7, or maybe a 6, where he's not the most attractive dude out there, but he's actually good enough where he takes care of his body, and he actually has good, genetic features in terms of, yeah, he's not super duper, you know he's not super duper hot attractive, but he's good enough to keep himself presentable, and he actually possesses something of which that he actually has, a good presentation of his character. Now granted, there are people in the world that have that, inequality factor, where there are people that let's just say, they're physically disabled, or they just don't have the right, genetic functions where they can't be overtly attractive. That does happen. Hold on, let me pause. All right, I'm back. So yeah, basically, to kind of further into my point deeper, there are people in the world that aren't as attractive compared to most dudes that are trying so hard to get buff at the gym and look super ripped out and have all these crazy, crazy attributes, just to make a girl to be oh wow, he's really doing everything good, with his life. But the problem is that he's doing too much to impress that one person, that being the girl, to like him. And the probability of him even getting close to that level is not always going to be there. But it's not all about the physical looks, it's all about your personality at the end of the day, most likely. But for the women that don't really care about, I guess, the moral character out of a man, but they're just trying to just take advantage of a man, that's where, that false positive, ratio comes into play, where the women will just, she'll subjectively choose however she wants to be with a certain guy, and for that given time frame, that is what she will have in terms of her own preference. Whether if she's on a high time preference to determine that she wants to have a man that can give her everything in terms of what she wants for the sexual appeal, therefore it would, it would suit her, her interests of being with somebody that is worth her time and effort to take advantage of that person and to be with that person because of the, what the physical looks, versus on a low time preference, function, which, I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. The woman that thinks like that doesn't really care much about what the man really possesses all the way through, but if she has a good, preference in terms of what she wants out of a guy to be successful, and he actually has things going on with his life, versus, let's just say, maybe in certain cases where women don't look as attractive, but but they kind of like use like this like very degenerate mindset of like wanting to be with like a guy because that's just how they kind of are, and then they just connect themselves with somebody that thinks is just as broken as them, which, I'm going to get to that, portion of my argumentation after I make this point, but there are people out there that don't have all the functions of being super highly attractive, but they will be with like another individual that does think like that. And those people are usually like the people that would be rated as like maybe like a 4.5 out of 10, or maybe even like a 3, or maybe like a 5. But then again, like I said, I don't really care too much about like the dating rating of like how people, do it, within the Western world, at least, in the US, where, if you're like a 6, you're most likely not going to be with like a woman that's like a 9 or a 8. So, in order for you to get to that 8 or 9 level, you got to be at least like a 7.5 or higher. So, I mean, it's like a stupid grading system that people have, but I don't really care. I mean, granted, with me, I will say, as far as just my own experiences, I have like a certain preference in terms of being with like a woman that's educated, and she actually has, her life together, and she wants to achieve goals, like the same way that I do. But in terms of like the toxic mindset that most people have in the Western world, I will say that there are people like that out there that really do have a broken mindset where they just care all about the sexual appeal. But then what ends up happening is that you create this toxic family mindset where, most likely it's going to be a degenerate family that's going to end up separating. But this is where that breeds up the next line of children up in the next family, where they're going to do the same thing. They're going to say, oh, well, your father wasn't really there, and, I was young and dumb back in my day, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, like you kind of hear about the story over and over, especially in the US at least, where, this kid was 17, the other girl was 16, but then as they had, their relationship, and then they had like they had a child, quote unquote, like they ended up, splitting away, and, but the child ended up going to foster care. And I mean, I'm not going to get too deep into those type of stories, but, you kind of get what I'm saying. Like, moral character is what builds a good strong family, but also the the like, how should I say, the hold on, let me pause this video. All right, I am back. So yeah, basically what I was saying is that moral character drives the mindset of what builds a strong, like a strong family, in the end. And how that works into the long term is that the family alone is not really determined by just like the, I guess, like the social preferences that people want out of a certain individual. It's all about the personality mindset of like what a man and woman come to fruition in order to build a strong family. It's basically all due to ethics and, I would say first principles per se, because if that's never to be respected in the first place, then you're never going to have like a proper family where people are going to be respecting each other, and therefore the parents end up being violently separated, like, in a way where things don't go, correctly for like, for the child. And then, like, it usually ends up being like a very sad story of like people being overtly like aggressive and very like abusive. So I think that's pretty much what the problem, especially, in the Western world, where you do see like a lot of people getting into like all these like crazy relationships, specifically like, in the US, and then it ends up being like, being like a very, messed up, timeline where the boyfriend and girlfriend, they were doing good at first, and then what ended up happening, it was just like some toxic behavior where, that the woman will cheat on the man and the man will cheat on the woman. And then like it ends up turning into like a fighting situation where some guy ends up, coming into like the mix, and then he ends up fighting somebody, and then he ends up getting beat up for it badly. So I mean, anything for those particular scenarios can happen, but it's like, why does it happen? Like, why is it that it's not as easy for any, just like I should say, any average guy that's out there that works on his life? You know, he's a hardworking man. Like, he could go to the gym every now and then, but it's like, if he doesn't really need to do that and he's just keeping himself in shape, and he's just, let's just say he's just like a average hardworking kid. Let's just say he went to, like, he went to school for, I don't know, I guess like I guess like tech school to become a civil engineer. And he got his money. He's not in debt, but he's just like your typical, average kid. And it doesn't matter, what race, like, he is, but it's just more so, if you got like a kid like that that thinks on his own and he has like a good future where his life is really just basically, work hard in school and get to a level of which, where he's at, and everything else will come, right together. Wouldn't that mean that is the character of having a good, successful man based out of what women want? And that answer to them is no, because they'll just say, well, we want more out of like a guy to, to carry the sexual, attraction, and therefore that's what gives that woman the ability to be with like a man that they want to be with. And it's very disingenuous, because it's not really determining any proper character that a woman wants, out of like a man. So I figure, honestly, to me personally, it does not really matter. And I think, I think the issue is that, well, I'm not gonna get too deep into like the whole communist, philosophy, but I'm gonna just put something out there where this is very prominent within the Western world, where this is a really big issue with a lot of people. But when Marxists, feminists have came into the picture in the Western world, specifically, you see that more women have the freedom to kind of express who they want to be. But on top of that, they go out of their way saying that they want these qualities out of like a man. But then what ends up happening is that as women become more self expressive to their own, like accord of how they view men, they then have this very, you know, very divisive, very defiant mindset where, this is basically built off of, academia, where more women have been like, I should say, they've been brainwashed to kind of think men are the problem, but they still want something better out of like a man to give them what they want. Hold on, let me pause this video. All right, I'm back. So yeah, basically, based off of like what I was trying to state is that when women think like that, to say men are the problem, and therefore, we need to go our own separate ways to be, divisive up against them. It then creates this very toxic, destructive mindset to state that we want to take advantage of the man and use him as a means to use sexual appeal to kind of make things go our way of where we want to be in the world. And you can see that a lot of women in today's first world societies, especially in the US, or let's just say Canada, or wherever, you see that more women are more heavily inclined to be very deceptive against a man, but they want to use the man as much as possible, because there's a mindset where females will act in a certain way where they don't want to be, I should say, they don't want to be responsible for what they say or do around a guy in a particular relationship. They just want to use men as much as they want, because it serves their their personal interests for how they want to take advantage, of a man. So therefore, there's a, there's like a main reason why you why you have so many women that are very how should I say, they're very hyperactive up against a up against a man, and they have like this very weird, messed up mindset of like being very very dishonest up against like a guy. So, if if that if that one girl out of, let's just say, I don't know, like I'm just gonna just make something up. You got like how should I say, you can have like the most attractive girl in the world that can be with you in a relationship that's, let's just say, based out of like New York City, or let's just say anywhere in anywhere in the world, and she can say to you that she likes all these qualities out of you, and you try so hard to impress her. The minute you do one thing that does not suit her particular preferences, she's going to vilify you, and she's going to say to you that you're nothing, you don't do everything for me, and blah blah blah. But it's like you see that woman is trying to use you as much as she can, because that's not true love out of, out of that woman. But the woman that does care about you, that actually does not look all the way attractive, but she still takes care of her body, where she still presents herself in a proper way of being, somewhat, like attractive. She's not entirely like a 9.5 out of 10, or even like a 10 out of 10. Let's just say she's like a 8.2 or 8.3, but she's still good enough to kind of like do what she does to sustain her life. I mean, that's a woman that does care about you, but it's not all about just it's not all about like the physical, like attractions based out of how she is. Part of it, for most guys, yes, it should be important to, to be with like a woman that, takes care, of her health and body, and therefore, that does play like a factor for men that, that do be with, other women, where certain, physical like attractions are held to a particular standard. But more so, at the end of the day, if you are the most attractive person on earth, and you have a really bad personality, but you choose to take advantage of other people that carry that same mindset as you, then you're never going to go far in a relationship, to the point where neither party will ever be properly stable. And therefore, even if you try to move further to say like, well, let's get married and let's have kids, what just ends up happening at the end of the day is that you're just gonna crush everything away, and then the whole family's just gonna, fall apart. And then that's where you get all these like really bad degenerate families that think, in a certain way, to say that, well, you know men got to do better, or women got to do, women got to do better. And it's never to be the case. It's all about morals, and it's all about principles. Hold on, give me 1 second. All right, I'm back. So yeah, I basically stated that it's all about morals and principles, that, that determines, a good relationship, between, either man or, or woman. So there's really nothing that you can really say that really that really structures like a good, proper dating relationship, because everybody's different, and people have different beliefs of how they do. Some people say that people need to be more religious to keep a relationship going, which I disagree, because that's never to always be the case, because there's plenty of people that believe in God, and then guess what, they end up going out of their way to cheat, another person, and then that never always tends to really work out. Even if you have like this weird mindset of saying that you want to get married before you even have kids, like that doesn't make any sense either. It's like, if if you love a woman and you care about her, and you know that there's more to life to, to be with her, and both of you have, like a strong value to be together for, forever, or for at least a long time, then commit to it. Commit to it as a man, and you don't need to prove that with like a marriage, license, from the state, through government, to say that you need to, be married, be married, in order to kind of live your life effectively as possible with a relationship. It's all about committing yourself to be dedicated and not having to break any trust with that person when you say that you're going to do what you need to do as a quote unquote boyfriend for the girlfriend. But don't let the girl take advantage of you. That's definitely for sure, because that's what a lot of guys do. They allow the women to use that corruptive feminism that they have. Not all of them, because not all females obviously think like that, but a lot of men fall victim to it. Therefore, they end up being violently, psychotic over certain things that girls do to them. So, you have those guys that are very emotionally, torn in terms of what a woman basically wants out of a particular man. And then when the man is like going through all these like mind games, with like a female, then that female just ends up, tearing everything like apart to make him think, in a certain way that he doesn't feel like things are being hype, being properly stable. So therefore, that man, he ends up losing his proper control over things, because there's certain people that get so emotionally messed up over it, where they just want to end up taking their anger out on somebody else, because they want to it, basically utilize any means of a coercive action to basically determine you know some sort of means to basically be in control of the situation by being overtly like aggressive. So I mean, overall, I think the dating world in the West world is pretty bad. Um, it's really not something where it's a lot easier for a man to just have a conversation with a woman and actually get along with her, or even in the sense of you going to like any event that you want to just sit back and like get to know people at a sporting event. You can't even like talk to like a woman like effectively. I mean, that's never always to be the case, but y'all know me, like I go to like my boxing my boxing like events, but I don't really like basically record anything that I do in my day-to-day life, where I'm just like, oh yo, like I spoke to like this one hot girl at this boxing like event. No, like I don't need to say anything like that. I've spoken to some nice women at the events, and guess what, some female fighters that I actually enjoyed talking to at the like event too, or at any boxing like event that I've been to. Like, yeah, like I've ran into some really nice people that I've actually gotten like along with. But yeah, I mean, I have like multiple options that I go within my day to day life for, for my choice of venues that I go to try to like get to know people and actually speak to them. And like I don't ever go back to like the bar to like get to like talk to like like a particular woman. Hold on, give me 1 second. All right, I'm back. So yeah, I don't hold on, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't go out to let the bar to kind of do let the traditional like sit down, get a beer and just speak to some girl that's like right there. Those days are definitely not there anymore. And even if the like even if that's ever to be like a case that somebody does that, it's not really like a good way to like get to know somebody while you're trying to like drink and actually get like your thoughts out, in a way where things aren't really overtly expressive, effectively, getting to know somebody while you're at like a bar. But like I said, if you go to like a really good venue, at a particular event, especially like a sporting event, you have like a better chance probably getting to speak to some girl at a good sporting event where you and her can actually get along right then and there, and she has something within interest to actually like get to know you, and you actually can get along with her. Granted, it's not always like a one-to-one match, but you have to like approach yourself effectively in a way where you're not having to kind of like be very I guess socially awkward, because I think that's what a good portion of guys, do, like, regardless if they're looking like attractive or not. But it's like, it's all about your like approach. If you don't approach a girl effectively and treat her with any means of respect, or even being properly mature, like, like in order to be like a stand-up individual, then that's what causes, like, a lot of women to kind of be toxic, and then they have this weird mindset of saying that, well, the guy who is toxic, ends up, getting the girl faster than someone being, I should say, respectful per se. But um I personally don't really like a I don't like I personally don't really like agree with that. I think it's just more to do with that a lot of girls that are really broken and toxic, they're just fine with like a guy being disrespectful to them and treating her in a certain way where she basically is used to being treated, like as if, she's she's being, disrespectfully talked down to, as if she doesn't have, any personal responsibility of actually like holding a a respectful conversation. So she prefers to have somebody, be, socially, well, like she prefers someone to be verbally abusive towards her. So therefore that's her preference in terms of what she wants, versus that if she actually was educated and she was coming from like a strict family to be with like a guy that actually treats her with actual respect, then that whole, variable would change altogether, where a woman would actually demand seeking, a guy that actually respects her effectively, and both parties actually get to know each other a lot easier, and they don't have to struggle even getting to know each other, whether they go to, let's just say, like a library, and they just see each other at a library, or maybe like she just asks like a question to say, oh hey, do you like watching, I don't know, Dragon Ball Z, blah blah blah. Like, I mean, there's always great, opportunities to get to know somebody wherever you go. But the problem specifically in the Western world is that it's very difficult for a woman to even have that conversation, like, with you. And granted, it's not always like a 1-to-1 match, because not everybody's like that. But that's where that's where everything currently stands right now, in the, in the eyes of, the psychology of like how women think, in today's modern reality. So I mean, personally with me, that's just how I see it. I could be wrong, but I don't try to impress anybody wherever I go. I just live my life, and I do what I have to do to kind of go in a direction of being with someone that can meet my values, and I can actually have like a good, I can have a good, respectable conversation, and build a good bond with that particular, individual that I like. So I think that's how everything needs to be fixed, and, in the first world, societies, especially in the Western world specifically. But until then, things will continue to be the way they are, because women choose to have a very toxic mindset where they've been poorly raised by certain. Hold on. All right, I'm back. So, yeah, I'm gonna just finalize and say that women have been raised in a way where they don't respect any moral principles out of having a respectable man in front of them. Therefore, they put themselves in a position of having a like abusive relationship to be presented to them, because they don't have any proper values of wanting to seek a better man that's going to give them, the proper comfort of actually enjoying a good healthy relationship with somebody that actually cares, versus somebody that doesn't care. He's in the business of just taking advantage of her and treating her horribly, in the sense of, he wants to, he wants to physically and mentally abuse her, which that's what most girls are doing to this day, especially with social media, with OnlyFans and Fansly and all this crazy stuff. that goes on within crazy dating relationships, especially in the sexual, appeal mindset. But that's just pretty much what I have to say. Take it for how it's worth for my 2 cents. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy that. I guess for the next video, I'll probably just talk about some other topics for y'all. I got more gaming topics for you guys. Don't get your hopes up off of that. I got more gaming topics to talk about with some ideas with Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection and all that. So definitely stay tuned for that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I did. And this is K-Rod signing out. And also, please go subscribe to Marshall No Commentary. He does some really good gameplay with his Call of Duty content. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I'll see you guys later. Hope you guys have a great day, and peace out, and have a good night. Bye.